The china teacup slipped through Olivia Wright's fingers and shattered against the wooden floor of the general store, the third dish she had broken that morning. And when she looked up through her curtain of auburn hair, she found herself staring into the amused eyes of the tallest cowboy she had ever seen. "I am so sorry," she stammered, dropping to her knees to gather the pieces, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Her fingers trembled as she tried to collect the shards, and she could feel every eye in the store watching her. This was exactly why her aunt had written to her father back in Philadelphia, begging him to reconsider sending Olivia west. But her father had been adamant that a summer in Wyoming territory in 1878 would teach his clumsy daughter some practical skills and toughen her up. "Let me help you with that, miss," a deep voice said, and suddenly the cowboy was kneeling beside her, his large hands carefully picking up the larger pieces. He had dark hair that curled slightly at the collar, sun-bronzed skin, and eyes the color of strong coffee. A scar ran along his jawline, giving him a rugged appearance that made Olivia's heart skip in an entirely unfamiliar way. "I should not have been standing so close to the display," she said miserably, watching as he gathered the fragments with surprising gentleness. "I have always been like this. Clumsy. My mother used to say I could trip over air itself." The cowboy glanced at her, and there was something kind in his expression that made the humiliation slightly more bearable. "These things happen, miss. No harm done." "Except to Mr. Henderson's inventory," Olivia said, gesturing helplessly at the broken china. "That is the third piece I have broken this morning. The third. I also knocked over a barrel of flour and somehow managed to tear my skirt on a perfectly smooth counter edge." The store owner, Mr. Henderson, hurried over with a broom and dustpan, his face pinched with irritation. "Miss Wright, I must insist that you be more careful. These items are expensive and your aunt will have to pay for the damages." Olivia felt tears prickling at her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. She had been in Opal, Wyoming for exactly 2 weeks, and already she had broken more things than she could count. Her aunt's patience was wearing thin, and Olivia knew that another letter would soon be winging its way back east, detailing her latest disasters. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I will take care of it," the cowboy said suddenly, straightening to his full height. He pulled out a few coins from his pocket and placed them on the counter. "Consider it paid for." Olivia stared at him in shock. "Sir, I cannot possibly accept. It is already done," he said, and there was a hint of amusement in his voice now. "Besides, I am Lucas O'Brien and I run the ranch just outside of town. I could use someone to help out at the house if you are looking for work. My housekeeper just left to take care of her sick sister in Colorado, and the place is falling apart without her. You want to hire me?" Olivia could not keep the disbelief from her voice. "But I just demonstrated quite spectacularly that I break everything I touch." Lucas O'Brien looked at her for a long moment, and then something remarkable happened. He laughed. It was a warm, genuine sound that filled the store and made several other customers turn to look. "Then I suppose we will just have to make sure we fill the house with unbreakable things," he said. "Or better yet, maybe we will build an unbreakable life together, one that can withstand a few accidents along the way." Olivia felt her breath catch. There was something in his tone, something that suggested he was not just talking about employment. But that was ridiculous. They had only just met, and he was clearly just being kind to a foolish city girl who could not manage to walk through a store without causing destruction. "I am serious about the job offer," Lucas continued, his expression sobering slightly. "I need help running the household, and you clearly need a place where breaking a few things would not be the end of the world. Ranch life is hard, but it is honest work. What do you say, Miss Wright?" she should have said no. She should have thanked him politely and gone back to her aunt's house to help with the sewing and try to stay out of trouble. But there was something in Lucas O'Brien's eyes that made her want to be brave, want to prove that she was more than just a clumsy girl from Philadelphia who could not manage the simplest tasks. "I say yes," she heard herself answer, and the smile that spread across his face made her feel like she had just made the best decision of her life. Her aunt was less enthusiastic about the arrangement. That evening, when Olivia returned to the small house on the edge of town and explained what had happened, Martha Wright set down her knitting with a heavy sigh. "Olivia, dear, I do not think you understand what you are agreeing to. Ranch work is not easy, and Lucas O'Brien, while a respected man in this community, lives several miles outside of town. You would be relatively isolated, and the work would be much harder than anything you have done before." "I want to try, Aunt Martha," Olivia said firmly. "I know I have been nothing but trouble since I arrived, and I know you have been writing to Father about sending me home early. But please, let me try this. Let me prove that I can be useful, even if I am clumsy." Her aunt studied her for a long moment, and Olivia could see the concern in her eyes. Martha Wright was her father's older sister, a widow who had moved west after her husband died in the war. She had built a life for herself in Opal, running a successful seamstress business, and she had agreed to take Olivia for the summer as a favor to her brother. But it was clear that having a niece who broke things and caused chaos had not been part of her plan. "If this is truly what you want, then I will not stand in your way," Martha said finally. "But promise me you will be careful, Olivia. Lucas O'Brien is a good man, but he is still a man, and you will be living under his roof without proper supervision." "He said he needs a housekeeper," Olivia protested. "There is nothing improper about that. Just promise me you will remember your upbringing," her aunt said. "And promise me you will come back to town if anything makes you uncomfortable." Olivia promised, though part of her wondered what her aunt was so worried about. Lucas O'Brien had been nothing but kind and respectful, and she was determined to prove that she could handle the work. She moved to the O'Brien ranch 3 days later, her few belongings packed into a small trunk that Lucas loaded onto his wagon with ease. The ride out to the property took nearly an hour, and Olivia spent the time studying the landscape around her. The Wyoming territory was nothing like Philadelphia. Here, the sky seemed to stretch forever, a vast expanse of blue that made her feel simultaneously small and free. The mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still dusted with snow despite it being June, and the air smelled of sage and wildflowers. "It is beautiful," she said softly, and Lucas glanced at her with approval. "It is," he agreed. "I grew up in Kansas, but I came out here 5 years ago looking for a fresh start. Bought this land and built the ranch from nothing. It has been hard work, but I would not trade it for anything. What made you want a fresh start?" Olivia asked, then immediately wondered if she was being too forward, but Lucas did not seem to mind the question. "I was engaged once," he said, his eyes on the horizon. "Back in Kansas. Her name was Sarah, and we were supposed to get married in the spring of 1873. But she decided she wanted someone with more prospects, someone who was content to work in town and have a predictable life. I wanted adventure, wanted to build something of my own. So she married a banker and I came west." "I am sorry," Olivia said quietly. "That must have been difficult." Lucas shrugged. "It was 5 years ago. I am over it now. But it taught me something important, that I would rather build a life with someone who shares my dreams than try to change myself to fit someone else's expectations." Olivia thought about that as they continued along the rutted road. She had never had anyone interested in marrying her back home. Her clumsiness and her tendency to speak her mind had made her the subject of gentle mockery among the young men in Philadelphia society. Her father had hoped that sending her west would somehow transform her into the kind of refined young lady who could attract a suitable husband. But Olivia suspected it was more likely that she would just break things in a different location. The ranch, when they finally arrived, was more impressive than she had expected. The main house was a solid two-story structure built from logs, with a wide porch that wrapped around the front and a stone chimney that rose from the center of the roof. There were several outbuildings, including a large barn, a bunkhouse for the ranch hands, and what looked like a chicken coop. Cattle grazed in the distant pastures, and she could see 3 men working near one of the corrals. "Those are my hands," Lucas explained as he helped her down from the wagon. "Jake, Tom, and Red. They are good men, hard workers. They eat their meals in the bunkhouse, so you would not have to cook for them unless there is a special occasion. Mostly you would just be taking care of the main house, preparing meals for me, doing laundry, that sort of thing." "I can do that," Olivia said with more confidence than she felt. She had helped her mother with household tasks back in Philadelphia, though her mother had usually redone most of her work after she went to bed. Lucas showed her inside, and Olivia felt her eyes widen at the spacious interior. The first floor consisted of a large main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area with a cast iron stove, and a small dining table. Stairs led to the second floor, where there were 3 bedrooms. Lucas pointed out which one would be hers, a modest room with a single bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the pastures. "It is not fancy," he said, almost apologetically, "but it is clean and comfortable." "It is perfect," Olivia said honestly. The room was simple, but it had a warmth to it that made her feel welcome. And the view from the window was spectacular, the kind of view she could never have imagined back in the crowded streets of Philadelphia. Over the next few weeks, Olivia threw herself into her work with determination. She woke before dawn to prepare breakfast for Lucas, usually simple fare like bacon, eggs, and fresh bread. She swept and cleaned the house, though she managed to knock over a chair and break a lamp in the process. She attempted to do laundry in the large basin out back, though she somehow managed to dye one of Lucas's shirts pink when she mixed it with a red tablecloth. Each mishap made her want to cry with frustration, but Lucas never grew angry. Instead, he would just laugh and help her clean up whatever mess she had made, his good humor somehow making the disasters seem less catastrophic. "You know," he said one evening after she had accidentally burned dinner, "I am starting to think you might be the most entertaining housekeeper I have ever had." "Entertaining is not the same as competent," Olivia said miserably, staring at the charred remains of what was supposed to have been a roast. "No, but it is better than boring," Lucas replied, reaching for the bread and cheese instead. "Besides, you are improving. You only broke 2 things this week, and that shirt you washed for me, the pink one. It has become my favorite. The hands think it is hilarious." Olivia looked up at him in surprise. "You actually wore it?" "Of course I wore it." "You worked hard on that laundry, and I am not about to let your efforts go to waste just because the color is a bit unconventional." Something warm bloomed in Olivia's chest, a feeling she could not quite name. Lucas O'Brien was unlike any man she had ever met. He was patient and kind, but there was also a strength to him, a quiet confidence that came from building a life with his own hands. She found herself looking forward to their evenings together, when they would sit on the porch after dinner and watch the sun set behind the mountains. He would tell her stories about his life, about the challenges of ranching and the satisfaction of seeing his cattle thrive. And she would tell him about Philadelphia, about the libraries and museums she missed, about her mother who had died 2 years ago and the father who loved her, but did not quite know what to do with a daughter who did not fit the mold. "I think your mother would be proud of you," Lucas said one evening after she had finished telling him about how she used to read to her mother during her illness. "You have more courage than you give yourself credit for." "Courage," Olivia laughed. "I am afraid of my own shadow half the time." "Courage is not the absence of fear," Lucas said seriously. "It is doing what needs to be done despite being afraid. You came out here even though you knew it would be difficult. You took a job even though you were scared of failing. That takes real bravery, Olivia." It was the first time he had used her given name instead of calling her Miss Wright, and the intimacy of it made her pulse quicken. She realized with a start that she was falling in love with him, this quiet cowboy who laughed at her mistakes and saw strength where she only saw weakness. But she had no idea if he felt the same way. He was kind to her, certainly, and friendly, but perhaps that was just his nature. Perhaps he saw her as nothing more than an amusing employee, someone to keep his house running and provide entertainment with her constant mishaps. Her confusion only deepened a few weeks later when a woman came to visit the ranch. Her name was Constance Miller, and she was the daughter of a wealthy rancher from the next county over. She arrived in an expensive buggy, dressed in a riding habit that probably cost more than Olivia's entire wardrobe, and she made it clear from the first moment that she had her sights set on Lucas. "Lucas, darling," she said, sweeping onto the porch like she owned it. "I was just passing through and thought I would stop by to see how you are managing without proper help. I heard your housekeeper left, and I have been so worried about you." Olivia, who had been in the kitchen preparing lunch, felt her stomach drop. She stood in the doorway, suddenly very aware of her simple cotton dress and the flour that dusted her hands. "Hello, Constance," Lucas said, and Olivia thought she detected a note of resignation in his voice. "This is Olivia Wright, my new housekeeper. She has been doing an excellent job." Constance's eyes swept over Olivia with barely concealed disdain. "How charming," she said in a tone that suggested she found it anything but. "I am sure she is doing her best, though keeping house on a ranch is quite different from whatever she is used to in the city." "Olivia is from Philadelphia," Lucas said, and there was an edge to his voice now, "and she has adapted remarkably well to ranch life." "Philadelphia," Constance repeated, as if the word tasted sour. "How exotic. Well, I am sure she will learn eventually." "In the meantime, Lucas, I wanted to discuss the possibility of you joining my father and me for dinner next week. He has been wanting to talk to you about expanding your cattle operation, and I thought it would be a perfect opportunity for us to catch up." Olivia retreated back into the kitchen, not wanting to hear Lucas's response. She busied herself with the lunch preparations, but her hands were shaking so badly that she nearly dropped the pot she was holding. Of course, there would be women like Constance interested in Lucas. He was successful, handsome, and kind. Why would he choose a clumsy city girl over someone who understood ranch life, who came from a wealthy family and could help expand his business? She was so lost in her miserable thoughts that she did not hear Lucas come into the kitchen until he spoke. "I told her I was busy next week," he said quietly. Olivia turned, surprised. "You did not have to do that on my account. If you want to have dinner with her, I do not," Lucas interrupted. "Constance Miller has been trying to get me to marry her for the past 2 years, ever since her father decided that joining our ranches would be good business. But I have no interest in a marriage based on property lines and cattle numbers." "What kind of marriage are you interested in?" The question slipped out before Olivia could stop it, and she felt her cheeks burn. Lucas looked at her for a long moment, and something in his expression made her heart race. "The kind where two people actually care about each other," he said. The kind where you can be yourself, even if yourself is clumsy and breaks things occasionally. The kind where you laugh together and build something real, not just something that looks good on paper. Olivia could not breathe. Was he saying what she thought he was saying? But before she could respond, they heard the sound of Constance's buggy departing, and the moment passed. Over the following days, Olivia found herself watching Lucas more carefully, trying to decipher his feelings. He continued to be kind and patient with her, helping her when she struggled with the heavy laundry or when she could not figure out how to work the finicky stove. But there was a new tension between them now, an awareness that had not been there before. It all came to a head one afternoon in late July. Olivia was in the barn, trying to collect eggs from the chickens. She had always been nervous around the birds, who seemed to sense her fear and respond with aggressive pecking. She was reaching carefully into one of the nesting boxes when one of the hens suddenly flew at her face with an outraged squawk. Olivia jumped back with a startled cry, lost her footing on the hay-strewn floor, and fell backward into a stack of wooden crates. The crates toppled over with a tremendous crash, and Olivia found herself sitting in the wreckage, eggs smashed all around her and a chicken feather stuck in her hair. She heard running footsteps, and then Lucas was there, his face creased with concern. "Olivia, are you hurt?" "Only my pride," she said, and then to her horror she started to cry. It was not just the fall or the broken eggs or the ruined crates. It was everything. The constant feeling of inadequacy, the knowledge that she could not seem to do anything right, the fear that Lucas would eventually realize what a mistake he had made in hiring her. Hey, Lucas said gently, kneeling beside her in the wreckage. "It is all right. They are just eggs and crates. We can replace them." "But I cannot replace my clumsiness," Olivia choked out. "I cannot seem to stop breaking things and making messes and being a burden. You would be better off hiring someone like Constance Miller, someone competent and capable who understands this life." "I do not want Constance Miller," Lucas said firmly. "I want you." Olivia looked up at him through her tears, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You want me?" "I have wanted you since the moment you dropped that teacup in Henderson's store and looked up at me with those beautiful eyes," Lucas said. He reached out and gently removed the feather from her hair. "I have wanted you every morning when I wake up to the smell of your cooking, even when it is burned. I have wanted you every evening when we sit on the porch and talk about everything and nothing. I have wanted you so badly it hurts, Olivia Wright, but I did not want to say anything because I was afraid you would think I was taking advantage of you." "Taking advantage of me," Olivia repeated, her tears forgotten. "Lucas, I have been in love with you for weeks. I just thought you could never care for someone like me, someone who cannot go 5 minutes without breaking something." Lucas laughed then, that wonderful warm laugh that she loved so much. "Then I suppose we are both fools," he said. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "Olivia, I do not care if you break every dish in the house. I do not care if you dye all my shirts pink or burn every meal. I care about you. I love you. And I want to build a life with you, an unbreakable life that can withstand any number of mishaps and disasters." "You love me," Olivia whispered. "I love you," Lucas confirmed. "I love your courage and your determination. I love the way you laugh when you make a mistake instead of giving up. I love the way you see beauty in this wild country. I love everything about you, broken eggs and all." And then he was kissing her, right there in the middle of the wrecked crates and smashed eggs, and Olivia felt like her heart might burst with happiness. His lips were warm and gentle, and when he pulled back, she saw her own joy reflected in his eyes. "We should probably clean this up," she said breathlessly. "Probably," Lucas agreed. "But first, I need to ask you something properly." He stood and helped her to her feet, then took both her hands in his. "Olivia Wright, I know we have not known each other very long, and I know this is fast. But life out here is uncertain, and I have learned not to waste time when I know what I want. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and let me spend the rest of my life making sure you know how extraordinary you are?" Olivia felt fresh tears spring to her eyes, but these were tears of joy. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Lucas O'Brien, I will marry you, though you should know what you are getting into. I will probably break our wedding china and trip walking down the aisle. Then we will use tin plates and I will catch you when you fall," Lucas said, and he kissed her again, deeper this time, until Olivia forgot all about the broken eggs and toppled crates and everything else except the feeling of being loved completely and unconditionally. They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony in Opal. Aunt Martha cried and declared that she had known all along that the two of them were perfect for each other, though Olivia distinctly remembered her aunt warning her about the impropriety of living under Lucas's roof. Constance Miller did not attend, which Olivia thought was probably for the best. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. Olivia wore her mother's wedding dress, which Aunt Martha had altered to fit her. She did not trip walking down the aisle, though she did accidentally step on Lucas's foot during their first dance at the reception afterward. He just grinned and whispered, "I told you I would catch you," which made her laugh so hard she nearly knocked over the punch bowl. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, both of them nervous but eager. Lucas was gentle with her, patient as he helped her understand the mysteries of physical intimacy. Olivia had been terrified that she would somehow be clumsy even in this, but Lucas made her feel cherished and desired, and when she finally fell asleep in his arms, she felt more content than she had ever been in her life. Life as Mrs. Lucas O'Brien was not without its challenges. Olivia continued to break things with alarming regularity. She shattered 2 more lamps, accidentally let the chickens out of their coop 3 times, and once somehow managed to lock herself in the cellar. But Lucas kept his promise. He laughed at her mishaps, helped her clean up her messes, and never once made her feel inadequate. In return, Olivia threw herself into learning everything she could about ranch life. She might be clumsy, but she was determined. She learned to cook meals that did not burn, even if it took her twice as long as it should have. She learned to do laundry without dyeing everything pink, though she still had occasional mishaps with bleach. She even learned to collect eggs without being attacked by the chickens, though she and the hens maintained a wary truce. But more than that, she learned what it meant to be a true partner. When a late summer storm damaged part of the barn roof, she was up there with Lucas and his hands, handing up shingles and nails despite her fear of heights. When one of the calves got sick, she sat up all night with Lucas, helping him nurse the animal back to health. And when a group of neighboring ranchers tried to pressure Lucas into selling his land to a railroad company, she stood by his side at the town meeting and spoke passionately about the importance of protecting their home. "You were magnificent," Lucas told her afterward, pulling her into his arms. "I am not sure I have ever been prouder of you. I may be clumsy with physical things," Olivia said, "but I am learning that I can be strong in other ways. You have taught me that." "We teach each other," Lucas corrected. "You have taught me that love does not have to be perfect to be real. That sometimes the broken things are more beautiful than the whole ones, because they have stories to tell." Fall arrived, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. Olivia discovered that she was pregnant in October, and Lucas's joy was so profound that it brought tears to her eyes. He became even more protective of her, insisting that she not lift anything heavy or climb ladders or do any of the more dangerous household tasks. "I am pregnant," not made of glass, Olivia protested, though secretly she was touched by his concern. I know, Lucas said, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. But you are carrying the most precious thing in the world to me, and I am going to make sure both of you are safe and cared for. Winter was harsh that year. The snow began falling in November and did not stop until spring. Olivia had never experienced a winter like it, where the temperatures dropped so low that the water in the basin froze solid, and the wind howled like a living thing around the house. But the house that Lucas had built was solid and warm, and she learned to appreciate the way the snow transformed the landscape into something magical and pristine. She also learned that being snowbound with Lucas was not a hardship at all. They spent the long evenings reading together by the fire, or playing cards, or simply talking about their hopes and dreams for the future. Lucas taught her to play chess, and she taught him some of the songs her mother had loved. They planned what they would do with the ranch in the coming years, dreamed about the family they would build together. I want at least 4 children, Lucas said one evening, his hand resting on her growing belly. Maybe more. I want this house to be filled with laughter and noise and life. 4 children, Olivia said with mock horror. Can you imagine how many things I will break trying to keep up with 4 children? We will just have to build everything out of iron and stone, Lucas teased. Or maybe we will just accept that a house full of broken things is a house full of love. Their first child, a son, was born in late May, just as the wildflowers were beginning to bloom across the pastures. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Olivia was certain she could not endure it. But Lucas never left her side, holding her hand and whispering words of encouragement, and Aunt Martha served as midwife with calm competence. When she finally heard her baby's first cry, Olivia felt a surge of love so powerful it took her breath away. Lucas placed the infant in her arms, and she stared down at the tiny red face with wonder. He is perfect, she whispered. Just like his mother, Lucas said, kissing her forehead. What should we name him? They had discussed names during the long winter months, but now that the baby was actually here, Olivia found herself remembering something her mother had said to her shortly before she died. She told me that if I ever had a son, I should name him after something strong and enduring, something that would remind him that he came from people who loved him completely. What about Benjamin? Lucas suggested. It means son of the right hand. It feels strong and enduring to me. Benjamin O'Brien, Olivia said, testing the name. I love it. Benjamin was a healthy, happy baby, though he seemed to have inherited his mother's talent for chaos. He was constantly knocking things over, pulling tablecloths off tables, and getting into mischief the moment anyone turned their back. But Lucas and Olivia found they could not bring themselves to be too stern with him. After all, he was simply following in his mother's footsteps. Life settled into a new rhythm with a baby in the house. Olivia learned to juggle the demands of caring for an infant with running the household, and Lucas hired an additional ranch hand to help with the increased workload. Aunt Martha was a frequent visitor, clearly delighted to have a grandnephew to spoil. When Benjamin was 6 months old, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This time, Lucas's reaction was slightly more measured. Already, he said, though he was smiling. I thought we would have a bit more time between children. Apparently fate has other plans, Olivia said. Are you disappointed? Disappointed? Olivia, I am thrilled, though I am a bit concerned about how we are going to manage 2 children under the age of 2. We will manage the same way we manage everything else, Olivia said confidently. Together, and with a great deal of patience and humor. Their second child, a daughter, was born the following spring. She had Lucas's dark hair and Olivia's green eyes, and they named her Claire, after Lucas's mother. Where Benjamin was boisterous and chaotic, Claire was calm and observant, seeming to take in everything around her with serious attention. "I think she is going to be the steady one," Lucas said, watching as baby Claire solemnly studied her own tiny fingers. "The one who keeps the rest of us in line." He was more right than he knew. As the years passed and their family grew, Claire proved to be the organizer, the planner, the one who could find anything that was lost and solve any problem that arose. Benjamin, meanwhile, grew into a strong, energetic boy who loved the ranch and followed his father everywhere, soaking up everything Lucas could teach him about cattle and horses and the land. Olivia and Lucas had 2 more children over the next 5 years, another son named Thomas, and finally a daughter they named Ruth. The house that had once seemed so spacious was now constantly filled with the sounds of children playing, crying, laughing, and exploring. Olivia broke more things than ever, distracted by the constant demands of 4 young children, but true to his word. Lucas simply replaced what was broken and laughed it off. "You remember what you said to me the day we met?" Olivia asked one evening. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sun set while the children played in the yard under Aunt Martha's watchful eye. "About building an unbreakable life together. I remember every word I have ever said to you," Lucas replied, reaching over to take her hand. "Why?" "Because you were right," Olivia said. "Our life is unbreakable, not because nothing ever goes wrong or because we do not face challenges, but because we face everything together, and that makes us strong enough to withstand anything." Lucas squeezed her hand, his eyes warm with love. "I fell in love with you the moment you dropped that teacup and looked up at me like the world was ending. I knew then that you were someone special, someone who felt things deeply and cared about doing things right even when they went wrong. And every day since then, you have proven me right 1,000 times over." "I love you too," Olivia said softly. "Thank you for seeing the person I could be, even when I could only see my flaws." "We see each other," Lucas corrected. "That is what makes this work." As the years continued to pass, the O'Brien Ranch prospered. Lucas's cattle operation expanded, and he gained a reputation as one of the most successful ranchers in the territory. But more than that, he and Olivia built a reputation as a couple who genuinely cared about their community. They helped neighbors in need, opened their home to travelers, and treated everyone who worked for them with respect and fairness. Olivia, for her part, never entirely lost her clumsiness. She still broke dishes and bumped into furniture and occasionally tripped over absolutely nothing. But she also became known as one of the best bakers in the county, famous for her pies and bread. She started a small school on the ranch, teaching not just her own children but also the children of their ranch hands and neighbors. And she wrote long letters to her father in Philadelphia, describing her life with such joy and contentment that he eventually made the long journey west to see for himself what had transformed his awkward daughter into this confident, capable woman. "I almost did not recognize you," her father said when he arrived, staring at Olivia as she stood on the porch of the ranch house, surrounded by her children. "You seem so happy, so settled." "I am happy, father," Olivia said. "I found a place where my clumsiness does not define me, where I am loved for who I am rather than in spite of it. I found a man who sees my strength instead of my weaknesses. I found a home." Her father met Lucas that evening, and Olivia could see him taking measure of the man his daughter had married. But whatever he saw must have satisfied him, because by the end of his visit, 2 weeks later, he told Olivia that he was proud of the life she had built. "Your mother would be so pleased," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She always said you just needed to find the right place, the right person, and you would bloom. She was right." Olivia cried when her father left, but they were good tears, healing tears. For the first time since her mother's death, she felt truly at peace with her past and excited about her future. Wyoming became a state in 1890, and Lucas took Olivia to the celebration in the territorial capital. It was the first time they had traveled together without the children, who were staying with Aunt Martha, and it felt like a second honeymoon. They danced at the statehood ball, and Olivia only stepped on Lucas's toes twice, which she considered a personal victory. "We have been married 12 years, Lucas said as they waltzed around the floor. "Can you believe it?" "Sometimes it feels like 12 days, Olivia said. "Other times it feels like we have always been together, like I cannot remember a life before you." "I cannot imagine a life without you," Lucas said seriously. "You are my heart, Olivia. You and our children. You are everything that matters." As they grew older, life on the ranch changed but never lost its essential character. Benjamin grew into a strong young man who took over more and more of the daily operations of the ranch, working alongside his father with natural skill. Claire became a teacher, running the school that Olivia had started and expanding it to serve more of the surrounding community. Thomas showed an aptitude for working with horses and started a successful breeding program. And Ruth, the youngest, revealed a talent for art, filling the house with sketches and paintings of the landscape she loved. Olivia watched her children grow with a mixture of pride and bittersweet nostalgia. She missed the days when they were small and needed her for everything, but she was also deeply proud of the people they were becoming. Each of them had inherited different aspects of her and Lucas, and together they were building their own lives while remaining deeply connected to the family and the ranch. "We did well," Lucas said one evening. They were in their late 40s now, their hair showing threads of silver, but they were still strong and healthy, still deeply in love. "Our children are good people, Olivia. They are kind and hardworking and honest. We can be proud of that." "I am proud of that," Olivia agreed. "But I am most proud of us, of this life we have built together. You know, I still break things all the time. I knocked over the milk pitcher this morning and shattered it, but it does not bother me anymore because I know it does not change how you see me." "How could it?" Lucas asked, pulling her into his arms. "You are still the woman who dropped that teacup and changed my life forever. You are still the woman I want to spend every day with, broken dishes and all." They were blessed with grandchildren as the years continued to pass. Benjamin married a woman named Sarah from a neighboring ranch, and they had 3 children. Claire married a teacher from Cheyenne, and they had 2. Thomas surprised everyone by falling in love with the daughter of a horse trader from Montana, and they had 4 children. And Ruth married a man she met at art school in Denver, an artist like herself, and they had 1 daughter. Olivia and Lucas's house was constantly filled with grandchildren, and Olivia discovered that being a grandmother was even more wonderful than being a mother. She could enjoy the children without the constant worry, could spoil them and send them home when they became too much to handle. And watching Lucas with his grandchildren, seeing the gentleness and patience he showed them, made her fall in love with him all over again. "You are a natural grandfather," she told him one afternoon. He was teaching their grandson how to carve wood, his large hands guiding the boy's smaller ones with infinite patience. "I had a good teacher," Lucas said, glancing up at her with a smile. "You taught me that love is patient, that it means meeting people where they are and helping them become who they are meant to be. I am just passing that lesson on." When Olivia was 60, she finally wrote the story of her life. It started with a china teacup falling to the floor of a general store and ended with her surrounded by children and grandchildren, living in a house filled with love and laughter. She did not intend to publish it, but Ruth convinced her to submit it to a publisher in New York, and to everyone's surprise, it was accepted. Unbreakable, a life built on love and broken china, became a modest success, selling well enough that Olivia received royalties for several years. But more important than the money was the letters she received from women all over the country. Women who wrote to thank her for showing them that they did not have to be perfect to be worthy of love, that clumsiness and mistakes did not define a person's value. "I never thought my story would matter to anyone else," Olivia said, reading through the letters with tears in her eyes. "I never thought that my little life on a ranch in Wyoming would mean anything beyond our family." "Your life has always mattered," Lucas said firmly. "To me, to our children, to everyone who has known you. But I am glad that others are getting to know you too, are learning what I have known all along, that you are extraordinary." They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary in 1898, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and what felt like half the population of Opal. The town had grown over the years, but it still retained its essential character, and the O'Briens were considered one of the founding families. At the celebration, Benjamin stood and gave a toast that brought tears to everyone's eyes. "My parents taught me something important," he said, his voice carrying across the crowded room. "They taught me that love is not about finding someone perfect. It is about finding someone whose imperfections complement your own, whose strengths fill in your weaknesses, whose presence makes you want to be better than you are. My mother has broken more dishes than anyone I know, but she has never broken my father's heart. And my father has built more than just a successful ranch. He has built a family, a legacy, and a love that will endure long after all of us are gone." Olivia looked at Lucas through her tears and saw him looking back at her with the same love and devotion she had seen in his eyes 50 years ago in that general store. His hair was white now, his face lined with age, but to her he was still the tall cowboy who had laughed at her clumsiness and offered her not just a job but a future. "I would do it all again," Lucas whispered, taking her hand. "Every moment, every challenge, every broken dish. I would choose you 1,000 times over, Olivia." "And I would choose you," Olivia whispered back. "Always and forever, my love." As they moved into their twilight years, Olivia and Lucas slowed down but never stopped living. They still took walks around the ranch every evening, still sat on the porch and watched the sunsets, still held hands like newlyweds. Their children ran the ranch now, but Lucas still offered advice and guidance when asked, and Olivia still taught at the school when her health permitted. They lost Aunt Martha when Olivia was 65, and it was a profound grief. But they took comfort in knowing that she had lived a full life and had been surrounded by love at the end. And they were grateful for the role she had played in bringing them together, for giving Olivia permission to take a chance on a life that had seemed impossible. When Olivia was 70, she fell ill with pneumonia. It was a serious illness, and for a time Lucas feared he might lose her. He sat by her bedside day and night, holding her hand and talking to her even when she was too weak to respond. He told her stories of their life together, reminded her of all the moments they had shared, all the love they had built. And slowly, miraculously, Olivia recovered. It took months, but eventually she was strong enough to walk again, to venture out onto the porch and breathe the clear Wyoming air. Lucas cried when she took her first steps outside, so grateful to have her back that he could barely speak. "I am not ready to leave you yet," Olivia said, settling into her favorite chair and reaching for his hand. "We still have more life to live, more sunsets to watch, more grandchildren to spoil." "We have all the time in the world," Lucas said, though they both knew that was not quite true. But they had learned long ago that what mattered was not how much time they had, but how they used it. and they were determined to make every moment count. They lived peacefully for several more years, watching as their grandchildren grew and started families of their own. They became great-grandparents, a joy neither of them had imagined when they were young. And through it all, they remained devoted to each other, their love deepening and evolving but never diminishing. Lucas died first, peacefully in his sleep when he was 78. Olivia woke one morning to find him still beside her, his hand still holding hers, his face peaceful. She knew immediately that he was gone, and the grief was overwhelming. But mixed with the sorrow was gratitude, gratitude for every year, every day, every moment they had shared. She lived for 3 more years without him, long enough to see 2 more great-grandchildren born, long enough to finish writing a second book about their life together. She filled her days with her family, with teaching, with walking the land she and Lucas had loved so much. But part of her was always waiting, always knowing that her time was coming. When the end came, it was gentle. She went to sleep one night and simply did not wake up, passing peacefully in the same bed where she had spent so many nights wrapped in Lucas's arms. Her children found her in the morning, a smile on her face, and they knew that she had gone to be with the man she loved. They buried her next to Lucas in the small cemetery on the edge of the ranch property, under a cottonwood tree they had planted together on their 10th anniversary. The headstone was simple, carved with their names and dates in a single line. Together, they built an unbreakable life. The ranch continued to thrive under the care of their children and grandchildren. The house that Lucas had built still stood, solid and strong, filled with the love and laughter of new generations. And though there were no more broken dishes bearing Olivia's particular touch, her presence remained in every corner, in every story told, in every lesson passed down. Years later, a great-great-granddaughter named Olivia, after her famous ancestor, stood in that same general store in Opal where it had all begun. She was holding a china teacup, admiring its delicate beauty, when someone bumped into her from behind. The cup slipped from her fingers and shattered against the floor, and when she looked up with burning cheeks, she found herself staring into the amused eyes of a tall young cowboy. "I am so sorry," she stammered, and the cowboy smiled. "Do not worry about it," he said, kneeling to help her gather the pieces. "These things happen. Besides, I heard a story once about a woman who dropped a teacup in this very store, and it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to her." Young Olivia looked at him in surprise. "You know that story?" "Everyone in Opal knows that story," the cowboy said with a grin. "It is practically legend. Lucas and Olivia O'Brien, the couple who proved that love does not have to be perfect to be real, that clumsiness is not a flaw if you find the right person to laugh about it with." "They were my great-great-grandparents," Olivia said softly. "Then you come from good stock," the cowboy said, standing and offering her his hand. "I am William Thompson. My friends call me Will." Olivia took his hand, feeling a spark of recognition as if something important had just begun. "I am Olivia O'Brien," she said, "but everyone calls me Livy." And as they stood there in the general store, surrounded by the shards of a broken teacup, neither of them could have known that they were beginning their own story, one that would echo the legend of their ancestors, and prove once again that the best love stories often begin with a broken dish and a cowboy's laughter. But that is a story for another time. For now, we leave them there, 2 young people on the cusp of something wonderful, standing in the same spot where, generations before, a clumsy woman and a kind cowboy had looked at each other and recognized something precious and rare. The legacy of Lucas and Olivia O'Brien lived on, not just in the ranch that bore their name or the book that told their story, but in the lives they had touched, the love they had shared, and the truth they had proven. that when you find the right person, even broken things can be beautiful. And together, you can build something truly unbreakable.